The Minnesota Vikings had one of the most roller coaster seasons that I have ever seen. Starting off super slow. Kirk Cousins ended up hitting on a stride even without Justin Jefferson in the lineup, and actually had a several game winning streak before, unfortunately, he tore his Achilles. And then everybody thinks the season's done, and then Josh Dobbs comes in and he actually leads them on a winning streak, keeps them in the playoff push, but then he falls off. Then they have to try and figure out with Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall. It was a very interesting season, and I think a lot of the credit that we'll talk about here later on in the segment goes to coaching Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores and just the overall team effort that they put into the season. So we're going to break down the 2023 season of the Minnesota Vikings, and then in the second half of the video, we're going to preview the 2024 offseason, some of their draft picks and some moves that we think they can make, and some free agents that we think they need to sign or might not make it. So be sure to watch the whole video. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and help us reach our goal of 3,000 subscribers by the end of the postseason. We're about 550 away or so as the recording of this video, which is January 10th. So we'll see. With your help, we can get there. Ryan, let's pull up the slide deck here that we have. So Vikings ended up going 7-10. They unfortunately had a tough fall the final couple weeks of the season here, starting with they lost an amazing game to Cincinnati Bengals in overtime in Week 15, game that they really needed. That got them to 500, and then they barely lost to the Lions at home. They did not barely lose to the Green Bay Packers in Week 17 on New Year's Eve, and then the last game in Week 18 they needed so much help to get into the playoffs, and it just wasn't their season. So it was, unfortunately, they had a 4-game stretch, but they barely beat if they barely beat Cincinnati in Week 15 and win that overtime game, they go into the final 3 weeks 8-6, and they just need to win one of those other games to have kind of locked up a playoff spot. All things extremely impressive, I would say, from this Vikings team, just with losing Kirk Cousins and then not really that much talent. I feel outside of the skill position players, I want to be very careful with the words, because they arguably have the best skill position player room offensively in the league now with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison. I know TJ Hawkinson tore his ACL, so we'll have to kind of watch and see how his 2024 is affected by that. And then Kirk Cousins, I think, then proved he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league and extremely underrated. I love seeing that. I love seeing the praise that he's getting now. But defensively, huge shout out to Brian Flores, because I was not super impressed with the overall talent on the team. Still not really, honestly, outside of Daniil Hunter, who we're going to get to here in a second. But the just overly aggressive strategy of Brian Flores, be like, we can't just drop back 7 guys in the coverage every single time because we're just not good enough. You're going to pick us apart. So they had one of the highest blitz percentage in the league, and like, you're just gonna have to get the ball out immediately or we're going to sack you. And if I go and look here, the blitz percentage, they had the highest. They blitzed over 50% of the time, according to Pro Football Reference on the season. 51.5% of the time they sent a blitz. And so, Ryan, I want to throw it over to you here. What are your overall thoughts on the Viking season, even too when you look at kind of some of their team rankings here? And then we can start to kind of transition on some areas that we think they need to improve on to help out some of these numbers.
Yeah, so you actually cut out there for me for a second, so I'm not sure if I'm going to repeat you or not. But one of the things, even with all the quarterback rotations that they did have, having the 5th-ranked passing offense, in terms of yards per total yards and yards per game, is really impressive, and I think that really does speak to how talented that receiving room is, and then also TJ Hawkinson as well. This offensive line, though, really did, I think, struggle outside of Christian Darrisaw. They don't really have a whole lot of talent invested into that offensive line, and in the running game that really showed. This was their first year without Dalvin Cook, and they were just kind of rolling with Alexander Madison and seeing how that goes. And so, yeah, they were ranked 29th overall. And then defensively, you kind of touched on this, but they were so aggressive on the defensive side of the ball that, especially in the latter half of the season, as they really, I think, kind of found their identity, that they were okay. They did get burned every now and then, but they were serviceable, especially running the ball. They had a top 10 run defense there. And then passing wise, being 24th, they have so little talent, I think, in the secondary, that they, even with being that aggressive, still really struggled to kind of hold receivers to minimum minimal yards and keep receivers shut down for the first few seconds of every play. So that just a lot. I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. Let's go ahead and get into the next slide and just kind of talk about some of the notable free agents and team needs. So to start out, they have almost $40 million in cap space, which is a little above average in the NFL this year. Kirk Cousins, Daniil Hunter, Marcus Davenport, KJ Osborne, and then a few offensive linemen. I'll let you
Dalton
say the names.
Risner, guard, Ole Udo, and then Schlotman, Austin Schlotman, David Quisenberry are also free agents. I kind of lumped all of them in here together, and then just according to as of right now on who some of the starting. Only Dalton Risner is the only guy who is starting, according to our lads on their starting depth chart. I want to go see here if there's anybody else that I might have missed. Blake Bandel now. And so I just bring that in just because for a team that was already not the best on the offensive line, especially interior. I think even like Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, I think that those guys are solid tackles in the NFL. Mm-hmm. My concern for them was always on the interior. And I think that kind of speaks back a little bit to why the running game wasn't nearly as effective and hasn't been that effective over the past couple of years, was because of just some of the weaknesses throughout that offensive line. So I think that's an area that they need to address. And when they have so many guys already hitting free agency, it's going to be interesting to see how they go and navigate that. And if they go and add young talent, or if they want to go bring guys in. But if they want to bring guys in, that's going to be less money that maybe you want to pay Kirk Cousins on a 1-year deal to come back. And so, and specifically, I just speak to this point here, even with both their first 2 picks, like there's not going to be an interior offensive lineman that they're going to be. I mean, they're all going to be available at number 11. You're not going to want to take them at 11.
Yeah.
And at 42, there might be maybe some guys can rise up. But that's where it's going to be very interesting, because if they don't really need tackles and need interior, what are going to be some of the areas that they're going to want to go and address? And so that's kind of where we lead into the team needs here. And Ryan, outside of what you see here, is there anything maybe you'd want to add, or just what are your overall thoughts?
I think they just need defense as a whole, not just D-line and secondary, just defense as a whole. People to contribute and come in and make impact plays for them. One of the things, too, is I do think that this would be a prime spot for somebody like Troy Fautanu, Jordan Morgan, one of those like bigger, bulkier college tackles that's going to make that transition to kick inside at guard at the next level. I just think you look at their profile, they're athletic. That I think they can kick out in a pinch if somebody goes down, but I think their primary spot is going to be at guard at the next level for Troy Fautanu, Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton from Duke.
Are you talking about at the 11th pick or the 40? You're talking about the 42nd pick, right?
At 42.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they could get. To me, this is a really good spot. I think for like Jared Verse or Dallas Turner or Laiatu Latu, if they really like him there at the 11th pick for edge rusher. I don't have any corners or anything ranked as high in this class as of right now to really be like excited about taking them at 11. But I also think too they could potentially make a move up and maybe jump the Jets and maybe try to jump Tennessee to get one of those tackles if those guys fall, because you got to think there's 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are going to go in the top 5 or 6. There's also going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors. That's already 6 guys right there. And the cost to move up into the top 10 from 11 is going to be a lot lower, especially at the back end of the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see.
Sorry, I was going to add on. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. And then I was going to say, if they really want to address the interior later on, it rounds 4 and 5, I think will probably be the sweet spot. And they have 2 picks in each for both of those rounds.
Yeah. I agree. Like if they maybe want to try and if they find an offensive lineman that they love and they want to jump the Jets at 10, I think that could be a potential spot, especially with the Bears, who are going to have 2 top 10 picks and they might want to get some more draft capital. I think another name as well, I don't know if you mentioned, but Jersey Newton, I think would be a good fit. That best defensive tackle in this class so far, and I think he'd be a great addition. So we'd have to just kind of go and see overall, but a lot of different unique ways I feel the Vikings can go. But I think not having that 3rd pick might affect a little bit of their maneuverability upwards. just because I feel like to move into the top 10 is going to need to be a second or a third, depending on how far they move up, plus some futures as well. So, but they do have decent draft capital. They have a couple of good early day 3 picks as well, still just outside the top 100. I have to see where the Lions fall and how that pick changes. And then same with Kansas City and Cleveland with their 5th round picks. So in general, though, I do believe that they're going to re-sign Kirk Cousins. They are technically, I would put them maybe in the competition for Justin Fields and trading for him. But at the same time, I think not having Kirk Cousins in the second half of the season, and then we saw the struggles of the passing game, I think everybody gave a lot of appreciation, like, holy cow, like, we really need to hang on to this guy. So I know he's coming off an Achilles injury. So we'll have to kind of see how the Vikings view that. I'm not a doctor, but at the same time, he's not like an explosive player to begin with. I mean, he's a pocket passer. So I don't think I completely knock on wood, probably a very ignorant thing to say. I don't think it will have a major effect overall on his mobility because he wasn't very mobile to begin with overall. But once again, roast me in the comments. I'm sure that's a very ignorant thing to say. I'm talking about in a relative scheme of like if Justin Jefferson towards Achilles, that's like a huge blow compared to like if Kirk Cousins or even Aaron Rodgers. So curious to see how both those guys bounce back next year. But I do think that they will re-sign him. And I think at some point, maybe to your point with that 42nd pick, they're going to want to address the interior offensive line, but then hopefully also help out the running game as well.
Yeah. And I'm not going to laugh at you for saying that Kirk Cousins isn't mobile and that the Achilles injury there. I don't think Justin Fields is on the table for them. I highly doubt Chicago would move him inside the division.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, actually. That's funny.
Yeah.
I always forget. I don't know why I forget that they're in the same division. I don't know why. Like, it's just that one. It's just the Minnesota. I keep thinking they're in the West. I always keep thinking they're in the West for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, all in all, I think it was a okay season for the Vikings. I think this definitely was breaking in the averages from 2022 to 2023. Just because they won so many one-score games in 2022 that I think they lost more than their fair share this year. Just because so many fell in their favor last year. Not saying that like has anything to do with it per se, but it was just kind of a coming back to earth, the law of averages taking place there. And they still have a really talented team. I hope Brian Flores stays there and they get him some more defensive talent to kind of work with, because what he's able to do with this defense, which is one of the least talented in the NFL, in my opinion, and just how aggressive he was and the kind of conundrums that he would pose to offensive coordinators, I really liked. And I think it was good for this defense to really get out and get after the quarterback. And so I would love to see him stay there. Kevin O'Connell, I think, did a good job. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Minnesota Vikings 2023 season and what do you think they should do going into the 2024 offseason. Do you think that they should keep Kirk Cousins, move on, try to trade up and draft a guy, or maybe sign a guy in free agency and have a little bit of a bridge quarterback? Let us know down below. Other than that, we will see you guys